Ah! What the hell happened there? I was hanging out with Paul, then all of a sudden...
Happy Halloween!
Yes, you got me there, old friend.
Wait, did I really get you?
You did not get me at all.
Okay, I didn't think so.
So, hey everyone, you're watching RPadTV. Thanks for hanging out with us. I am Raymond. This is my excellent friend and longtime video game journalist, Paul Semel. Today we're going to talk about Agatha All Along, the latest TV series on Disney+. But let's do some updates first. I want to apologize for not streaming more in October. I actually had two really cool guests planned. One is in the music world, but he ended up getting a gig with a really cool guitar player who I can't mention, but I would have canceled on me too. And the other person had to cancel because they discovered they had Bell's palsy. So that is a legitimate excuse. So hope you're feeling better, thinking about you. So with that said, what's up with you, Paul? It's been a while.
Oh, same old, still out here in Los Angeles where most people are celebrating the Dodgers winning the World Series, and
well-deserved.
Yeah, especially with the Shohei Ohtani guy, because that guy is kind of a phenom.
Yeah, but he didn't do anything in the world. He got hurt though, but he didn't do much in the World Series.
But he got them there, and I think that there was like an enthusiasm there that kind of helped the team.
And plus, he's a big worry. Like if you're pitching around him, there's so many, it makes things better for the other players.
Right.
Carlos says, "Go Dodgers," betraying his stupid Cubs. Spoken like a true Chicago fan.
You're a couple days too late, dude. So
yes.
Anyway,
what's the latest on paulsemel.com? You got a lot of new stories up.
Got a lot of new stories up. A lot of good book stories. Earlier this week, I did a review of the new Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, which, if you're like me and you prefer playing on your own, is actually really, really good. The campaign is quite fun. The rest of the game is fun too, but that's the one that where things got really, really good, I think. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I thought you would be interested in, is next week I have an interview with the editor of a book called Honolulu Noir, which is part of this long-running series of basically geographically based noir short story collections. So there's been Detroit Noir, Manila Noir, New York Noir, Chicago Noir, et cetera, And this guy, Chris McKinney, who is a Honolulu native, and he basically put together this whole collection. It's all kinds of dark short stories. It's not all like noir crime stuff, but there is a fair amount of that, including one story, which I think is kind of interesting, is about the guy who inspired Charlie Chan. Do you remember? So apparently Charlie Chan was inspired by a real person, and so somebody wrote a story about the real person. And apparently it's also not an entire book of people killing tourists. I asked.
Okay.
So that'll be up next week.
Looking forward to that. Guys, check out Paul's site. The URL is below, but there is a direct link in the description for your convenience. Quick question. Dragon Age, the Veilguard came out today. I'm excited to play it. Are you going to be playing that one?
I don't know. I didn't do a review of it. Because here's my thing. I'm weird when it comes to those games.
Yes.
But the Dragon Age games. I didn't like the first one. I didn't like the third one. I loved the second one. And I'm alone in that, apparently. So I don't know if I'm going to like this one. I'm not sure. So I'm not sure what to do. Because I don't want to blow $60 and have it be like the third one where I play for like 45 minutes. Or not 45 minutes, like 4 or 5 hours. And then go... Because I tried twice to play that game, and both times I got about 4 or 5 hours in and was like,
I mean, I'm so invested in that universe already, and I've spent like hundreds of hours across those 3 games that
Right.
gotta see it through. So I'm excited to play it, and
People seem to people love it. I mean, and that's the thing. Like everybody loves it the way they love the third one, which is why I'm kind of like, what do I do? So
yes,
that's me.
yes. Well, there are worse problems to have. So,
There are absolutely worse problems to have.
for example, I mean, after the election, I'm probably going to get deported soon, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
But
well,
I hope we stay in touch. So back to Agatha All Along, as is our tradition. Let's start with a thread-sized review of Agatha. What do you got for me, Paul?
okay. Me. As interesting as it may have been, Agatha All Along wasn't my kind of thing. But then I knew that going in and still enjoyed myself. So,
I wrote, while I wouldn't call it a superhero show at all, Agatha All Along is a fun, creative, and captivating series with some fantastic acting and clever writing. Now, for people not familiar with it, this is a spin-off of WandaVision, which I believe was the second, or was that the first Marvel?
I think it was the second one after
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Falcon and Winter Soldier, yeah.
So WandaVision was neat, and I loved it because it was weird and wacky. Kind of took some inspiration from the Tom King comic books, which I'm a massive, massive fan of. And it's just really heady and thoughtful and cerebral, but very different. If you're into the typical superheroes beating the crap out of bad guys thing, totally not for you then, because this is weird and different. So, and this continues that. Like, I don't think this is a superhero series at all, even though there are people in superhero comics that appear in it. There are a few interesting firsts in the series. It's the first Marvel MCU property with bare ass that I can think of. I believe it's the first series or movie where the lead character has never had their own comic book. So that is pretty interesting as well. Unless I'm mistaken, feel free to leave a comment. And oh yeah, spoiler warning.
Has Echo had a book?
I think she's had her own. She's had her own runs.
I mean, I know there's a recent Daredevil and Echo comic, but I don't ever remember seeing like an Echo comic.
Right. You might be right about that. I think she did have a mini series at least, or an unsuccessful series.
Maybe.
If I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, I really didn't know what you would think of this because this is such a different Marvel series. But let's start on a positive tip. What impressed you most about Agatha All Along?
Well, I agree with a lot of the things you said. It was very well written. You had a lot of interesting characters. Kathryn Hahn, of course, is just
oh my god,
delightful in this as she was in WandaVision. And I did appreciate it for being so different, you know. And as I said, I knew that going in.
Right.
Like I knew going in. In fact, like what it reminded me the most of are two very different things and for different reasons. One is the Hocus Pocus. You know, that there's that movie with like Bette Midler and Sarah Jessica Parker and Kathy and Jimmy are witches, and it's like this weird comedy. Like it reminded me of that, and it also reminded me of oh god, I wrote it down too. Werewolf by Night.
Okay.
In the sense that but in the sense that it didn't feel connected to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like neither of in terms of like tone and presentation and things. I know there are connections, and we'll spoil those for people later, but like it didn't feel like it fit in with that, and neither did Werewolf by Night. But that I appreciated more because I'm a fan of old horror movies, which that was very influenced by. Like it's influenced by like, the Frank the Bell the Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney, like Dracula, Frankenstein, werewolf movies, and this was influenced by practical magic and as I said, hocus pocus and things that I'm not as big a fan of.
Right, and
but I
for
still
people
appreciate it.
For people who still aren't sure what we're talking about tonally, I mean, this is, how would you describe the series? It's part mystery, part light horror, suspense.
Yeah, I would say it's like a horror comedy mystery.
Yeah.
Like there is like, and when I say mystery, I don't mean like oh, someone got killed and you're trying to figure out who did it. Just in terms of like, there's a mysterious element to it that you don't really know everything that's going on, and there's a character and you're not sure who they are because they're concealed from telling you and
right
and whatnot. And there's people who talk about things like, well, she did this, and you're like, wait, what did she do? Like, you don't know what the backstory is. And
right, but in that sense, it's very much like WandaVision in terms of how they swerve the audience.
Yeah, except that WandaVision taken as a whole felt like it was part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, it didn't, the first couple episodes didn't, because they were going for like a sitcom thing.
Right, but you also had two
right.
characters that were major parts of the movies, so
right. But I feel like once with WandaVision, like once they got to the point where Darcy showed up and the guy from Ant-Man, then it started to feel like, oh, okay, now this is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Whereas this never made that kind of tone connection for me. Which is not a bad thing. I'm just pointing.
Yeah, it's just that's how it is. Yeah. I agree with almost everything you said. Kathryn Hahn's performance, that might be one of the most impressive performances I've seen in all of Marvel. I was just floored by her. We'll talk more about her specifically later. I did like the writing. It was very, like I said before, it's weird, it's unique, very creative. The thing that surprised me and what I didn't expect were the costumes. That they were phenomenal. They hop in the different trials that they go on. They go to like different time periods. So
right.
I think one of the first ones was, they almost go to, they look like New Englanders, they're in this like rustic New England style house. So they have appropriate costumes for that. Then they have this 80s sleepover. So you got the headband, the side ponies. And then my favorite were this, which is almost like, I wasn't sure if it was 60s or 70s, because I see parts of both. Like if you look at the two characters on the left, they're definitely 70s. But Alice Wu in the middle, I get more of a 60s vibe from her, and Kathryn Hahn as well. What did you make of that, Paul? Is this 60s or 70s? Just
I feel like it's early 70s when you still had the lingering 60s aesthetic going on.
Right, the hippies.
Like it's not like 1977. It's like 1972.
Okay, fair enough. But I mean, the costumes were tremendous, and I did not expect that. Very pleasantly surprised. Was there anything that disappointed you about Agatha All Along?
No, I mean, because like I said, I kind of knew going in that it wasn't going to be my kind of thing. And so in some respects, my expectations were sort of lowered by that, Okay. But it was better than I thought it was going to be. Like, it wasn't like Echo, where I didn't think I was going to like it, and then I really didn't like it, It was better and more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. The only thing that I would kind of say was a bit of a bummer was I thought the ending was a bit anticlimactic.
Oh,
like the second to last episode seemed to end things. Agatha's dead. Everything wraps up, and then all of a sudden there's that Kaiser Soze moment with the kid, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." But then they kept going with it, and that last episode just seemed like kind of, I don't know.
Well, I mean, for me, the biggest disappointment was the Salem 7. I kept waiting for them to do something cool, and they kind of never did. They just chased the good guys or the protagonists around,
Right.
and then they died. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, like I don't know. I mean, they looked creepy. They had creepy costumes, kind of like the Nazgul kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Maybe they go to the same Macy's or whatever. Yeah, they were kind of MacGuffin-ish, where did they really serve a purpose? I mean, they chased them. They helped nudge things along.
Yeah, I think that was their purpose. Just
enough.
to motivate them to not like sit around on the road and do nothing.
Right. So I want to talk about Kathryn Hahn's performance specifically, because for me, this was phenomenal. I thought she'd be good, of course. Very talented actor that can do comedy and drama and everything in between. But the range she showed, I mean, this character was so well written and layered and complex. And Kathryn Hahn really brought out all the nuance, At times she's like, if you look at this screen, she can be over the top villainous kind of deal. Other times she's like manipulative schemer. Other times she's sensitive mother. And other times she's just confused and trying to figure out who the hell she is after this ridiculously long life she's led. What stood out for you in her performance, Paul?
What it kind of reminded me of, but it was very different. And maybe I'm just saying this because I just watched it. Is the Cassandra in Deadpool and Wolverine? Where both actresses just really seem to sink their teeth into these roles and really have fun with them. I mean, that's the thing about this show with Kathryn Hahn is you felt like she was really enjoying this, that this wasn't a job to her, that she was really excited that she, like you said, she got to do, all this stuff and be like a huge bitch and also be like vulnerable and all the things in between and be funny and dramatic and whatnot. And that came across in screen, and it was good because I feel like that was appropriate for the character, because I feel like the character, for the most part, loves life and is larger than life, but but she does have like kind of a dark side, a sad side to her. So,
both of those things, dark and tragic, separately and together.
Yes.
And she brought all of that out. It was just, I love the way this character was written and how she absolutely performed the hell out of it. And just massively talented woman. And I've also seen her nude in two shows now. She did this movie with Juno Temple where she was nude, and I was not expecting her to be. And I did not expect her to be nude in this movie.
Yeah, that was a moment. And I appreciate, this is going to sound sexist coming from a guy, but I kind of appreciated that they didn't shy away from showing her butt.
What do you mean?
Well, and I like the idea that they kind of were like, we're showing the butt. Because they could have very easily like moved the camera up a little bit and just implied like, oh, she's naked, or they could have like, put a bush in the way or whatever. Right. And I liked it. Did
they show Thor's ass in Love and Thunder?
Yes, they did.
Okay, so this is the first female ass.
Yes, first lady ass.
Yes.
And I liked in that one, and again, in that one, I liked that they were like, we're showing the butt. We're not going to cover it up.
But I mean, and this isn't a judgment on Kathryn Hahn, who is a beautiful woman, but Chris Hemsworth is a young, buff Australian dude. So I get why they would do that. Whereas I don't think anyone was really clamoring for Kathryn Hahn's ass, which was totally fine to see. Happy about it. But
yeah, I'm not complaining,
Yeah.
It's not like Howard Stern's ass. If you remember when he showed his butt on the whatchamacallit, the MTV Movie Awards.
Yes, and they reenacted that in Private Parts as well.
Right.
One of the things that surprised me because I did not pay too much attention about the casting of the show.
Mhm.
All of a sudden I see Patti LuPone on, and I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that name resonates to, I mean, she's popular. People from the East Coast will know her if they're into theater. She's really popular in the gay community because of theater. But she is a stage legend who's also been
Yeah.
in a lot of movies and TV shows. But yeah, I mean, I did not expect this actor to be in a Marvel anything, and I
Right.
loved it. I mean, she's been in so many great musical theater productions. I guess Evita is probably the biggest thing, at least when I was growing up.
Right.
She was the lead in Evita, and I did not expect her to be in this. I cannot think of another actor like this, like unless they threw Liza Minnelli in the next Avengers movie or something, because I think of her as a musical theater legend.
Right.
And then all of a sudden she's in a Marvel TV show. What the hell? I mean,
yeah, but Marvel has done this a couple times now. I mean, you've got Robert Redford who turned up in not just in The Winter Soldier, but turned up in Avengers Endgame, like after he retired from acting. And also
Kenneth Branagh.
Kenneth Branagh. You've got Kate. I mean, I was going to say Cate Blanchett, but she's occasionally done things like this, and since then she did the stupid video game movie, which we won't talk about. But Leslie Uggams as Blind Al in Deadpool is another one where like you're like, they got who to do what?
But that at the time that was a Fox thing when they first did that.
But still, like getting Leslie Uggams to be and like I remember like flipping around the TV one day and Tamron Hall had her on, and I was like, oh my god. And Tamron Hall was like, how did you wind up in this movie? And like, Leslie was just like, they asked very nicely, and Ryan was very nice about it. I'm like, I never would have thought of that. And that's how I felt about Leslie Uggams. Like, I never would have, Patti LuPone, like, I never would have thought of her for this role, but she was great in it. And of course, and the idea of her being in it is just insane.
Yeah, I love that it's preposterous on paper, but it works so well because there is a musical element to this series. It's not full on musical theater, but there is a certain song that plays a big part, bigger than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
and I loved how that swerve as well. And
and that's not even. And the thing is, let's keep this in mind. That's not a song that you would normally associate with Patti LuPone. That's much more a song you'd associate with like Stevie Nicks, because it's much more of like a 70s female fronted rock band song.
Right. Well, I mean, in that version of it, but I mean, the origins of it go back to,
right. But even then, when you go back to the origins of it, the origins are not dinner theater. They're not musical theater, like, which is what you think of a Patti LuPone. Like, it's not like this started as part of a play.
I don't think of it as dinner theater. I think of it as Broadway musical.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Dinner theater is like some crap show in like Fort Lauderdale where the guy playing Willie Loman is also your waiter at the same
Club Benet Dinner Theater in Sayreville, New Jersey.
There you go. Hey, that's where Bon Jovi is from.
Yep.
I do want to talk about the rest of the cast because there are a lot of great performances there as well, in addition to Kathryn Hahn and Patti LuPone. But I want to talk to everyone out there about RPadTV gimmicks. The holiday season is approaching, and what would make a better gift than some RPadTV merch? We have some t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, bags, phone cases, and more. All these are available on Amazon stores around the world. If you go to Amazon.com or CA or JP, just search for RPadTV. These things should pop up. But if you want direct links, go to rpad.tv patreon.com/merch. And it's a great way to support the site if you like what we're doing. But if you don't have money to spend on this kind of stuff, subscription, thumbs up, and especially comments are super appreciated. Now, back to our show. Let's talk about the rest of the coven here. Did anyone stand out to you, perform? I mean, I thought they were all good to great in various degrees, but what did you make of the ladies in the coven?
Well, I always like seeing Deborah Jo Rupp.
Yes.
Even though she's kind of basically played the same character in this that she played in that 70s show and on Friends.
Yes.
But she does it so well that I don't care.
Yeah.
I also really liked the kid.
Yes.
Joe Locke. In part because he was really good, but also because he managed to hold his own among this when he was with these people, because I can't imagine that being easy. I mean, it's one thing to hold your own against, Patti LuPone on your own or Kathryn Hahn on your own. But when you're sitting there with Kathryn Hahn, Patti LuPone, Audrey Plaza, and Deborah Jo Rupp, and Shashir Zamata, and the other woman, whose name, of course, I'm drawing a blank on. I mean, all of them together.
Right.
That can't have been easy, especially for a relatively unknown and young actor. So
yes.
I applaud him for being able to pull that off.
Yeah, I thought he did really well. And he also, I mean, he didn't have as much range to work with as Kathryn Hahn's character, but he did have that innocent aspect for most of the show, but he also had that flashes of sinister every now and then.
Yeah.
And I thought he did super well with that. Sashir Zamata, who I only know her from SNL, but she really impressed me. I thought she played a fantastic Jennifer Kale, she's like a secondary magical character in the Marvel comics. I know her from like a lot of Man-Thing and Ghost Rider stories. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the magical characters aren't super big in Marvel comics in general. So if you think of her as a secondary magical character, not working with much here, but she did great with that character. I loved how the Coven, they used different aspects of magic. They had divination, they had potions. So it was almost reminded me of Harry Potter in a way, how they all went to different magic classes. But
interesting.
I like how they did that. And Jennifer Kale was the potions witch in their Coven. They needed different types of magic to complete the Coven to go on this quest, which we find out is not what you think later on.
Right.
Now let's talk about some favorite scenes or moments. What do you recall, and what stood out to you? I
mean, the one that stood out to me was the Kaiser Soze moment. I mean, because I did not expect that at all, and I did naturally think of Kaiser Soze now when I see something like that. But it was interesting because it was done in very much the same way, and yet it didn't feel like a ripoff of that, if you know what I mean. Like,
right.
Like, and you have him looking around his room, and he's like, oh, and that, and oh, right. And like, I thought that was really, really cool.
Just like his mom.
That to me was the big thing, I think.
I mean, as a comic book nerd, I loved when he floated in the full Wiccan costume. I totally geeked out at that. That made me very happy. I love the Young Avengers comics, so I was very happy to see him in full Wiccan wear. They teased it a little bit. They had the headpiece before, but seeing the shawl and everything and his stupid little booties made me very happy.
I also like the I think it was like in the first episode when her neighbors were sort of talking about her, like, and then like they were like, oh god, it's starting again. Like, I love I'm surprised that anybody still lives there. Like I would have gotten the hell out of town, but like
So I was
all
reading this. People are like, why didn't these guys move? And they're like, well, their property values are probably shit now, so they can't sell.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably hard to sell.
So for people not familiar, they brought for the first episode, and I think they show up in the penultimate episode again. They brought back a lot of the characters from WandaVision that were the possessed townspeople, but now they have their own minds.
Right.
And they had a cameo from the guy that played fake Quicksilver, which I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
He was a very deep throat kind of thing. And but like a really sort of sad, pathetic deep throat, and he's like come see my comedy show. Yes. We're sorry.
But Kathryn Hahn had two lines that really struck me. I think they're both in the penultimate episode, where the one that wasn't as powerful, when Jennifer Kale's in the body bag, then Billy tries to go help her, and then she says, "Don't steal her struggle." Like,
oh yeah.
That's funny. And then when Billy asked, "Did I kill him so Tommy could live?" And she just says, "Sometimes boys die." And that one just like stabs you right in the heart when you learn to her.
Yeah, I remember like when that happened, I was like, you just know there's somebody out there watching this who lost their son, and they literally just stopped watching this and now they're crying.
Yeah, well,
and I know that wasn't the intention of it, but yeah.
I was talking about this show with my friend that was in the military, and he said that they said the same thing to something similar when they served. You know, they said sometimes soldiers just die, and I'm like, it just really gets you. But yeah, those were. But the Wiccan moment as a comics nerd, yes, that was it for me. But sometimes boys just die. Ooh, that will haunt me for years to come. Just the line and the way she delivered it. What a powerful moment that was. You mentioned Aubrey Plaza before. We haven't talked about her much, but she plays who at first you think she's just some adversarial witch, but later we find out she is death, as in the personification of death. As in one of the major forces of the Marvel universe, her polar opposite would be eternity, in the sense that death means everything dies, but eternity stands for everything doesn't disappear really. So you're dealing with major cosmic forces here, but also in a comic book sense, death plays an important part in the stories of Deadpool and Thanos. For those not familiar with the Infinity Gauntlet in the comics, Thanos in the movie wants to kill half the universe to create a balance, but in the comics, he wanted to kill half the universe because he's in love with death, and this was meant to impress her. So, Paul, what did you think of Aubrey Plaza's performance in general, and do you think we'll see more of her either in Deadpool or a Thanos flashback or bringing Thanos back maybe?
Oh, okay. I don't want them to bring Thanos back.
Okay.
I want Thanos to remain dead. I want anybody who... this is one of the things in the comics that I never like, is they'll kill off a character that I don't like, and then they bring him back, and I'm like, ugh, why? Because it's just... No, let some people have to remain dead, and I want Thanos to remain dead unless they do it in an episode of What If. Then I'm fine with them doing something like this. Having her team with Deadpool, I mean, at this point, I kind of want to see Deadpool with everybody, because it's just the idea of him playing off people.
Right.
Like, I like you know what I mean? Like, in my head, like, I really want to see him and Ms. Marvel interact. I would love to, I mean, there's the obvious ones of, like, you know, him and Spider-Man and him and Captain America, but like the idea of him and I always forget her. Kate Bishop, like hanging out together would be hilarious. Him and She-Hulk, like arguing over the fourth wall thing would be hilarious. So, you know, him and Aubrey Plaza, I think, could be really, really fun.
Yeah, as actors, that's great, but narratively it works too. I mean, if you're not familiar with the comics, Deadpool also has a romantic relationship with Death.
Right.
And I think one of my favorite things, I should have done a screenshot from the comics where Deadpool tries to high five Thanos because they're as he calls it toboggan twins, because they both had sex with Death.
Right. I don't know that I would necessarily want to see the Deadpool storyline with her, but it would be fun to see them sort of interact in some weird way.
Right.
I don't know how you. I mean, that's the thing. Like the Agatha thing, I don't. Except for Wiccan, I don't really know how it's going to have a big effect on things. Like I don't imagine like Agatha turning up as an Avenger.
No, of course not.
But I mean, the sort of like magic aspect of things, I feel like they're gonna want to keep any kind of magical stuff to like Doctor Strange.
Right, or maybe she can play a part in that. I mean, that does lead into our next question. Where do you think Billy and Agatha pop up next? I mean, you don't do an Agatha season 2. Maybe you call it something else if they do that, because then it becomes more about Billy and Tommy at that point.
Right.
Or do they just show up?
I mean, it seemed like they were setting up a second season. It really did, because they were like, all right, let's go find your brother.
Right.
I mean, I think you're right. You don't call it, Agatha All Along season 2. Maybe you come up with like some other, Agatha and Wiccan, take the show on the road or something. I don't. That's why they don't pay me the big bucks. But yeah, it does seem like they're setting up like a second season, and as we've sort of talked about, like if they are going to try and find Tommy for Young Avengers, they have to somehow find him. They can't just be like, he can't just turn up and be like, oh, like this witch and my fake brother showed up and now I'm here.
Right. Although that's another scene when he's reincarnating Tommy into that drowning kid, where that kind of gave me claustrophobia, just the way they shot and cut it. I thought that was very well done, and it didn't cost like millions in CG to do that. So
right.
I appreciated the simplicity and effectiveness of it. But yeah, right. I mean, we know they're planning a Young Avengers, so eventually at some point Tommy will be found, and presumably Billy and Tommy will be part of the crew. We have 3 Young Avengers confirmed, potentially 4. So far Marvel has confirmed. In the center we have Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. On the left we have Stature, who is Ant-Man's daughter, Cassie. And on the right we have Kate Bishop as Hawkeye. We also had America Chavez in the last Doctor Strange movie, who was in the Young Avengers in the comics, but they have not said anything about her in any press releases. I do hope we see that character and actor again, because she is cool and the character is cool.
And apparently she knows how to dance.
Yes. So is Billy and Tommy enough if you have Wiccan and Speed, or do you want to see others?
I thought about this, because there's actually a lot of people they can do.
Yes.
Because you've not, like you said, you have Ms. Marvel and what did you call her? Stature? Is that her name? Like,
yeah, because she becomes like a giant man, or I guess giant teen.
Right. But you've also got Ironheart. You've got Scar, Hulk's son.
Oh, that's right.
There's talk of Amadeus Cho.
Really?
And in fact, I wasn't able to find it, but there was a story within the last 2 weeks about Logan Kim from Ghostbusters Afterlife playing Amadeus Cho.
Oh, wow.
There's been talk of Miles Morales forever. There's
Yeah.
been talk of Nova, and they could do Vision.
Right.
Because we know they're doing a Vision show. We just
Right.
don't know what it is, but it could be based on that run of the comics where he builds a wife and 2 kids and goes to live in the suburbs.
Right. That is the
Although
Tom
that
King
is
comics.
Yeah. Although that is very close to WandaVision, so maybe they wouldn't do that. I don't know.
And they also had Kid Loki, who plays a massive part in the comic books, but they showed him briefly in the Loki season 1 he was in. But I cannot imagine a Young Avengers without a Kid Loki. I mean, of course they can do it, but the Young Avengers comics that I loved, Kid Loki was a massive part. So,
well, didn't he get eaten by the thing in the thing? Oh,
by Goliath.
Yeah.
Oh, you may be right. Yeah, but I mean, the multiverse shenanigans can erase anything, or
right. And it also depends on when they say Young Avengers, like, are they just going to do young people, or are they going to do like superheroes who are inexperienced? Like, are they going to bring, like, I've said to you this before, that I thought it would be interesting to do something with those characters, and then the Scarab from Moon Knight and She-Hulk.
Interesting.
And well, what I think they should do, and Kevin Feige, if you're listening, I want a free T-shirt for this. They should do Avengers Academy, in which you have all these kids that we mentioned, plus She-Hulk, plus the Scarab, and maybe one other sort of older but inexperienced superhero. And they basically go to a school to learn how to be superheroes. And you could have like different of the Avengers come in and sort of teach them stuff. Like you could have old Steve Rogers come in and teach them stuff. And you could have different people like that come in and teach them. And then you also then have the dynamic of, you have all these kids, and then you have, Jen Waters and the woman who is the Scarab, who are older people. Even though they're inexperienced as superheroes, they're still older, and they're not going to want to hang out with right. Kamala Khan and whatnot. So, and then you have that lead into like the Young Avengers, where they have the kids who are the event, like the B team, sort of the lower team, not the B team, but
I do think it's important to have an adult. Because Carlos says you were describing Sky High. I did not see that movie. Kinda, but a little different than that. But the difference in Sky High is you didn't really have adults who were the students, right? And that's what I'm sort of saying is it wouldn't be a school in Sky High was like superheroes going to high school, whereas this is you'd be going to learn how to be a superhero, kind of at the end of I don't remember. There was one of the Avengers. I think it was the second Avengers movie where they showed Steve Rogers and Black Widow meeting up with the other characters, and Falcon and whatnot. And they're like, all right, we're gonna whip them into shape like the 73 Mets or whatever it was. Yeah, but I'm thinking more this is more like a training, how do you use your powers safely? How do you work together as a team? Because that's obviously a big thing. You saw in the Age of Ultron, where the Avengers would do things where they would work together, and Thor would hit Steve's shield with the hammer, and the sounds would reverberate and take out a tank. And I think you have to sort of teach that. It doesn't come naturally, as we know from the Spider-Man movie, where the 3 Spider-Mans basically were we can't work together, and they thought Avengers were a band. So I was thinking of something more like Young Justice, and I mean the comics, not the animated series, where you had 3 young superheroes, and they're being almost supervised. Sometimes it's instructional, sometimes it's babysitting by Red Tornado. So you need a C-list character, partially because it's cheap. So But you also need facilities. So I was almost thinking that Happy Hogan could kind of be like their babysitter character. He could give them an old Stark Tech facility to train in and hang out in. So it's essentially their clubhouse. So and although Favreau isn't exactly cheap, but I think he would do it, especially if he wrote it. So
yeah, and that's the thing. I think if you went to Jon Favreau and you said, we have this idea for a TV show, and what do you think of this? And if he liked the idea, he'd be like, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah,
almost
similar.
I mean, then of course he'd want to bring Grogu into it, and nobody wants to see Grogu because everybody hates that guy.
Similar to how they used Happy in Deadpool and Wolverine, where he's kind of like
an administrator.
Yeah. So
we forgot somebody, by the way, that I hope they keep doing this with, is Ned, who we learn has magic powers. Like he could be in there as well, because we know he can do the Marvel swirly thing.
Oh yeah, that's true. But he has the slim. That would be cool. I would love to see a young Filipino actor in the Young Avengers. Although Haley Seinfeld, I keep calling her Seinfeld. Haley Seinfeld is also Filipino, so
that's okay. You can have more than one. It's
Yes, I'm down
for
quota
it. System.
Are you sure about that? So overall, I clearly like this more than you did because I like the weird, wacky, obscure stuff more. But how would you rate it and I hate doing this because they're not the fucking Olympics, but I think you liked it better than Echo and Secret Invasion.
I certainly liked it better than Echo, and I liked it better than yes. Although here's the interesting thing is I recently watched Secret Invasion for a second time.
Did it get better?
No. But I don't imagine myself ever wanting to watch Agatha All Along a second time.
Oh.
And not for the reasons that I don't want to, that I have decided I'm never going to watch Echo again for a second time. Like, I don't know. Like, it was fun, but.
I definitely will watch this again, kind of just to pick up all the clues that they laid out for the reveal that didn't happen till episode 8. Like when they first opened the door to the Witch's Road in the basement and Agatha says, I didn't know you had it in you. She's talking to Billy about conjuring this whole Witch's Road thing. So stuff like that. I want to look back at those moments and find those because all the hints are there. I just didn't pick up on it until later.
Well, no, why would you? I mean,
yeah.
That's a twist that nobody saw coming.
That's not true. A lot of people, because I play on Reddit a lot. Quite a few people predicted this on Reddit, and then at the time, people were like, no.
Wait. Did people on Reddit predict before it aired?
Yes.
Okay. Really?
And people were like, that's the dumbest shit I ever heard. You're a moron. And then it turned out to be true. So.
Well, no. Wait. Did they predict that he was Wiccan, or did they predict the whole Kaiser Soze? The Kaiser
Soze. Everyone knew he was Wiccan. I mean, I knew he was Wiccan in episode 1. Did you? That's a good question.
No.
Oh, no, I knew he was Wiccan
I didn't think of that at all. I thought he was just some kid, and then they were like, when they were like, oh, like, because remember, you go into the show thinking Billy and Tommy didn't exist,
right?
They weren't people in the. It's not like, because that's the thing. Like, it wasn't like they were real kids that Wanda took over.
But that was the case in the comics as well, and they ended up being people.
Right. But I didn't remember that. So I was sitting there thinking like, well, she just made them up. I mean, it made sense when they explained it, like, oh, well, basically, this kid died and she did manifest a soul and the soul went into the kid and blah, blah, blah.
So Carlos
says, see, that's what I thought. That's what I was thinking, is that it was Agatha's son.
Nicholas
when they started
Scratch.
talking about Agatha's
Right.
son being dead, I was like, okay, that's
No,
maybe at some point, like Agatha's son had gotten taken away from her, and she was told that he was dead or mind melded to being dead, and whatnot. So
I knew that was the swerve. That I knew that he definitely was not Agatha's son. But you know, I also see them also because you know they're leading up to Young Avengers, and also they had Billy's boyfriend who. That guy could be in the comics. Wiccan and Hulkling are dating, and that guy could kind of be like a young Skrull that the teen is dating. Another funny line going back, they call him Teen for almost all of the show,
right.
and Patty Lapone in episode 7, I think, calls him Teenager. And just like, oh, using his full name. I just thought that was, I thought that was funny.
That's good. That's a good line.
Silly stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, for you, it's middle of the road. For me, quality wise, I think it's pretty close to the top because of the writing, but especially because of Kathryn Hahn's performance. I just think she did an incredible job that I honestly couldn't think of anyone who's done better in the Marvel series.
I will say this. I did think it was, there was something I saw where somebody wrote like, oh, Agatha All Along shows you can make a good show when no one was asking for the show. And I was like, are you kidding? The whole reason they have this show is because people loved her in WandaVision and basically demanded that there be a show.
Yeah.
And then I also saw a video that Kathryn Hahn put out, and I guess I saw it after the fact, but it must have come out before the 2 episodes aired, where she was just talking about how much people were loving this show and how she loved making the show. She loved everybody involved in the show. She had a blast, and it was a big thing for her. And the fact that people were really, really into this show, like, really made her feel good. And in fact, she said something, and when she said it, I'm like, no, don't say that. She's like, please tell me what you thought of the ending. Tell me what you thought of the last 2 episodes. And I'm like, no, celebrity, don't tell people to get in touch with you. That's how bad things happen. But
that is true. That is true. But yes, I mean, I think I like that there's variety in this, and that this is one of my favorite things about comic books is that you have these weird and wacky stories. There's something for everyone. And I like this, that this wasn't your typical superheroes beating up bad guys kind of thing. This was really heady and trippy and weird, and totally there for it.
I feel like this is going to be kind of a cult classic among Marvel and among the MCU stuff.
Ooh, okay. Let's get out of here on this. Okay. Some people are, and this might be wishful thinking, but they're talking about this being an award-winning performance for Kathryn Hahn. Was she that good? Will Marvel get that kind of credit? Does she deserve it?
I think she certainly deserves the nomination. I think it and by extension deserves the award, but it will depend on what she's up against.
Fair enough.
You know, if she, I suspect that she will be in a very strong field, and that will, unfortunately, her being on a Marvel show could hurt. But at the same time, maybe not. You know, it depends on, like, you know, if she's up against, you know, Niecy Nash on Grotesquerie and you know, I don't know, some other really cool people, then it will be a harder thing. But you know, if the field is weak, then she becomes because the thing is, people like her and they're rooting for her, so that kind of helps. you know, and people would say, because people who vote on these things often look at it this way. They're going to look at her and think about all the good work she's done up to this point, and that will help. I mean, a lot of times it is sort of a legacy thing, you know.
And I cannot answer this question because I have no idea what people like in mainstream television. I pretty much only watch nerd shit. So I'm a bad person to ask. But
Right.
yeah, that'll do it with our Agatha All Along review and discussion. Guys, please share your thoughts in the comment. Oh no, we'll have one more comment first. I feel like she does deserve an award, says Carlos. She made a side character popular enough to get a show made, and the show didn't end up sucking like Joey. Oh,
that's a weird reference to make for this show.
Great reference.
But apt.
So funny story.
Yeah, it was decidedly more Frasier than Joey.
Like, there was a time when The Apprentice and Joey were just starting, and then apparently Trump put his arm around Matt LeBlanc and said, "You and me, kid, we're going to save this network." I mean, I guess he was half right. The Apprentice did really well. But Joey did find redemption, or at least Matt LeBlanc did in episodes, which,
yes,
fantastic series. Matt LeBlanc plays an exaggerated version of himself. I love that show. It's a great blend. I love British humor, and it's a British show essentially that also has Matt LeBlanc. But fantastic, fantastic show. So yes, now this will do it for our Agatha All Along review and discussion. Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Visit Paul's website, paulsemel.com. Link is below in the video description. And hope you can join us next week, where Mac and I will be talking about why Robotech is the best 80s cartoon. And the week after that, where we'll have a few people in, will probably be our Thanksgiving episode. We're going to talk about nerdy books, TV shows, and movies that we're thankful for in 2024. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.